Stuart Evey, who as an executive for Getty Oil recommended that the company invest in the startup that became ESPN and then took an active role in its management for 5 years, died on December 8 in Spokane, Wash. He was 84. His daughter Christine Evey said the cause was complications of diabetes. Mr. Evey, who oversaw Getty's non-petroleum businesses, was asked in late 1978 to evaluate a plan for an all-sports network. In those early days of cable programming, there were few channels, let alone any that televised sports 24 hours a day, as Bill Rasmussen, a former hockey team executive, was proposing. 7 other companies had rejected Mr. Rasmussen's pitch, and he was running out of money. Bill came to my office very disgruntled because he knew, in his mind apparently, that there's no way an oil company would ever be interested in what he had in mind. Mr. Evey, pronounced Evey, told the authors James Andrew Miller and Tom Shales for the book Those Guys Have All the Fun, Inside the World of ESPN, 2011. Rather than spurn Mr. Rasmussen, Mr. Evey was intrigued, but there was not much dependable information about the nascent cable industry to analyze. Networks like CNN and MTV had not yet started. And television executives like Roone Arledge, who had revolutionized sports coverage at ABC, told Mr. Evey that an operation like ESPN had little chance of succeeding. Stu was skeptical, and he was constantly trying to figure out what might go wrong, Mr. Rasmussen said in a telephone interview. But he was a sports enthusiast, and it would be a feather in his cap if it turned out well. Mr. Evey persuaded the Getty board to invest $10 million in ESPN for an 85% stake, with Mr. Rasmussen and his family owning the rest. It was a critical investment. The network went on the air on September 7, 1979, and eventually became the largest force in sports media. But something more than a willingness to take a risk attracted Mr. Evey to the ESPN proposal. By the time Getty invested in ESPN, Mr. Evey had been at the company for 20 years. He had built his career largely around that of George F. Getty II, one of the billionaire J. Paul Getty's 5 sons. As George Getty's administrative assistant and then his executive assistant, Mr. Evey was given a privileged view of the oil business and close-up exposure to his boss's drinking and depression. Because of his friendly relationship with George Getty, Mr. Evey became a protector, a kind of fixer. He thought of Mr. Getty as a brother who had likely led me down the road to overindulgences that might have killed me if I hadn't smartened up later in life, he wrote in his memoir, ESPN, Creating an Empire, 2004. By 1972, Mr. Evey was officially vice president for Getty Oil's diversified activities, which included commercial real estate, hotels, lumber mills, wine, and farming. The job kept him close to George Getty. A lot of times when I was with him, he would say, "Stu, one of my great hopes is to develop an operating company that doesn't have my father's name on it," Mr. Evey said in a lecture at Washington and Lee University in 2010.